Definitely.
All right, let's move into our teams that will shape the draft conversation. And let's start with the Buffalo Bills. They're certainly the newsiest of these teams, I think, this offseason because of the Stefon Diggs trade. My central theme of the offseason for the Buffalo Bills, Jordan, is a new look operation around Josh Allen. Like the Bills of old, what we've known from this team, like that's kind of gone at this point. A lot of defensive stalwarts have moved on. Von Miller's still kicking around there, but I wouldn't say he's been a stalwart defensive player for them since signing that contract. Steph Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. A lot of new faces on offense, and I think there will be more new faces on this offense come the end of the NFL draft. That is pretty much a lock. Like I said, they have 10 plus picks in this draft. And they have big needs on offense and on defense. So where do we stand with the Bills as we head into the draft here, Jordan?
Yeah, I look at their roster, and this is the most important draft that their general manager has been in. The first one was when he picked, obviously, Josh Allen and Jermaine Edmonds. He even casually stayed at like some of those picks and didn't have to move up pre-draft, and actually kept 2 first-round picks for that one, which was huge for him. But now it's, you just got rid of Diggs. You still got your quarterback that's capable of taking you to the Super Bowl. Can you nail down these first few rounds to get him a true weapon, someone that's going to, do the things that they need to do? But again, it's a rookie wide receiver. I know we've been blessed with the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons, but that's not the case for every rookie receiver. And then also Joe Brady's offseason. What offense are you going to build? Like with when he was with Carolina, I was excited when we signed him, came over from LSU. Then DJ Moore was out targeted by Robbie Anderson. Like that actually happened with Joe Brady. So what is his real plan coming into the offseason? That's going to be a big thing for me with the Bills, is what type of offense are they going to try to, emulate? And again, they have Dalton Kincaid. I think he's probably going to lead this team in targets. I think he's an exceptional receiving tight end, but is it Joe Brady going to be the one that actually gets it out of Dalton Kincaid? I don't know if that's going to be the case.
It's funny that you bring up the Joe Brady thing, because I overall, like, if just you remove the players and their resumes and all that, I overall like what Joe Brady did as the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator. And I was having this conversation with somebody in my Discord about this, because they were bringing up a Scott Barrett tweet where he said he talked to an insider, and a high-ranking NFL insider, and the biggest criticism around the league is that Joe Brady doesn't scheme guys open. I actually would disagree with that. I think he does a great job of scheming players open. And like you brought up Robbie Anderson, I thought he did a hell of a job scheming Robbie Anderson open on these, like I said it all year that year with 2020 Carolina Panthers. They were just hunting for like big, like a 40-yard touchdown on a crossing route from Robbie Anderson. They finally got it like in week 11, which who cares, took too long. I think it was like week 11. I have no idea, no memory for this, but I think they did a really good job scheming Robbie Anderson open. It's just like, to your point, do we want to scheme Robbie Anderson open, or do we want to scheme DJ Moore open? Like, I kind of think there's sometimes a misallocation. I certainly think a former Bills receiver who wore number 14 felt like there was a misallocation of the scheme and the targets and all of that stuff. So I'm glad you brought this up, because my general vibe on Brady is positive, but it could, like, maybe that doesn't stand up to the test of actual personnel development and resource allocation.
Yeah, and it's just from a fantasy perspective, like they might be spread and even in targets. Like with Carolina, Curtis Samuel had 1,000 yards all purpose. He had 200 rushing, like 850 receiving. DJ Moore got over 1,000 yards. Robbie Anderson got over 1,000 yards. Teddy Bridgewater was playing quarterback and then got benched for PJ Walker at some point in the season. And then it flipped back to Teddy. Like, Joe Brady dealt with the Matt Rule, David Tepper era. That was a little difficult, but now he's got a lot of pressure because the Bills, they can't feel like they're in a new era. They're going to be rebuilding, but they got to reload because it's the team with Josh Allen. Like, he's got to go for Super Bowls. Like, he can't be a part of like, oh, we're going to develop this year. Like, we're going to have to go and compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's just the sad reality of where he is and where the Bills are as an organization.
Dude, Mike Davis had 1,000 total yards for that 2020 Panthers team. So they got production out of a Teddy Bridgewater-led offense. And I do think that there's a big part of me that thinks some of these players can thrive in certain roles in this offense. Like, I'm a big Curtis Samuel fan. I like what Curtis Samuel brings. I think he is a guy that can win in those gadgety ways, but he can also be a true separator as an outside receiver against man coverage. I also like Khalil Shakir, but look, let's not mince words here. This is not a great receiver room. Even you like Dalton Kincaid. I have kind of my questions about Kincaid if like he can be a high volume player, but they need to add in this wide receiver room. This is not the group it's going to look like in week 1. When you look at the Bills receiver room, Jordan, just pass catchers generally, what's like, give me kind of an example of a player. You don't have to give me a specific player, but we can talk specifics here in a second. Give me just kind of like the ideal type of receiver that they need to complete this room.
They need someone that's a big body dude. I think they need someone that's going to give them yak. Like those two things are what they should be looking for. Again, with this rookie class, it's perfect. The player that like I personally see them trading up for, if he just slips just enough, is got to be Brian Thomas Jr. Mm-hmm. Like we've talked on Twitter about him kind of getting put in like a DK Metcalf like route tree early on in his career, which is going to be very productive for the way he's built as a receiver, where it's a lot of curls and goes. Fun fact, Josh Allen, that's the 2 most targeted routes that Josh Allen has basically year in, year out, because teams are terrified of his big, strong arm. And if you add him to this offense, then you're looking at someone I see as just a very big upgrade over Gabe Davis. Obviously, it's not Stefon Diggs. That's not what they're going to be able to replace. It's not going to go the way that the Minnesota trade worked, where they just got Justin Jefferson for Stefon Diggs. But if you add him into this room, then you have like the necessary pieces to be a very productive offense. And a team they face 2 times a year in Miami, that motion that they run, every team in the NFL should be stealing something from it. Whether that's Curtis Samuel in it, Khalil Shakir in it, they have to be using that type of motion with those 2 players to allow Dalton Kincaid to get a little bit more free, Brian Thomas to be a little bit more free, and Curtis Samuel's got the speed to be able to, he's not Tyreek Hill's fast, but he's fast enough to where that motion is going to give teams a difficult challenge ahead of them. And then you open the door with Brian Thomas, that dude, unbelievable. A lot of people talk about him benefiting from Malik Neighbors. I kind of feel like it was the opposite. I feel like the fact of his speed and just down the field threat at LSU opened a lot underneath for Neighbors.
Oh, brother. Number one, yes, I also kind of have that same feeling that there was a not exclusively Malik Neighbors is benefiting from Brian Thomas, but there's a little bit of both going on here. Like it's not just one or the other. Man, by the way, there's very few things that would make me feel more alive than Curtis Samuel on the cheat motion plays. Okay, so let's just get that on the record. I do think that is a big reason why they signed Curtis Samuel. He obviously played for Joe Brady before. He also he's experienced in the system, and Brady started using those pre-snap motion plays, not the cheat motion necessarily, but a lot more motion once he took over as the offense coordinator. So I think that's kind of Samuel's role on this team. Think of it a little bit like what Jaden Reed was doing with the Packers last year. I think that's kind of they're a little samey in terms of can do the gadget stuff, but are also real wide receivers as well. So that makes sense from a Samuel perspective. And man, like, yeah, look, we talked about it on the Robert Mays pod with the Bills, like, they would be a really fun projection to see them get into the top 10 and take like a Rome Odunze. That might make me feel more alive than the Curtis Samuel motion stuff is Rome Odunze in a Bills uniform. But I think a mild trade up is a little more realistic. And I've been saying, Jordan, that from a Brian Thomas standpoint, the spots I want to see him land on, I come to a type of team that where he doesn't need to be the immediate wide receiver one. They have like a high quality target earner that plays in the flanker position or the slot position. I think at the Colts with Michael Pittman, the Jags with Christian Kirk as a slot receiver is a high targeted player there, though not as quite as sexy as the Colts example. And then the Cowboys too. I think if the Cowboys just want to go full, we're going to be irresponsible, let's just take another receiver. We have CeeDee Lamb. He could complement him there as that vertical X receiver. But if you squint at the Bills, Jordan, I think Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel kind of combined can be maybe that one player. And then again, they have Kincaid. So I think he would be a very interesting player in terms of like where he gets drafted in rookie drafts. If let's just say, for example, one of these top 3 receivers gets taken by the Giants and, they land in a spot, or maybe even one of them goes to the Bears, right? And they're not going to lead the team in targets in year one, most likely. I wonder if Brian Thomas on the Bills, people would be like, I don't know if I would do it. I don't think I would advise it, but I wonder if people would start to think like gets a big boost being the wide receiver one nominally on the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, no, that's where it's going to be the thing where these guys, I saw it last year. Like James Cook got put as receiver a lot. Like Curtis Samuel can line up in the backfield. Like he had a lot of experience at Ohio State in that type of role. Even got a little bit of those reps when McCaffrey was no longer was not healthy with the Joe Brady offense. So again, it's not perfect for the Bills, but Brian Thomas is probably the best option. If they got Romo Dunze, that would be immediate. We're fine. Like they're going to be fine at receiver. Romo Dunze to me is the most disrespected, I think, wide receiver 3 I've seen. Like, I think he's with the Marvin Harrisons and the Malik Neighbors of the world of like, he's that good. He's just, it's kind of like Mike Evans, where Mike Evans every single year is unbelievably talented. But then CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, if someone told you that CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase were better than Mike Evans, you'd be like, okay, doesn't mean Mike Evans is less great. It just means he's a little bit lower than those guys.
Yeah, I think people that listen to this pod know how I feel about Roma Dunze, so I'm there with you, if even not one step further on him as a player. But any other parting shots on the Bills, kind of like what they need, what we're thinking here for this? Look, we know receivers a big need, and obviously on our fantasy pod, that's going to be a big discussion point. But it's by far not the only need on this team. And while they do have a lot of picks, they don't have a third rounder, but they have 2 fourth rounders and a second rounder to complement their 28th overall selection.
Yeah, I think safety is the biggest need. Like, obviously, when you lose Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Mike Edwards is a veteran, but he was pretty bad last season. Taylor Rapp wasn't exactly, he was good, but he was a rotational guy for them. So defensively at safety, obviously getting another pass rusher because what's going on with Von Miller is super important. And then I would say center. Like, they're putting Connor McGarvin there. Mitch Morris was the center forever. I don't like that move. I don't think Connor McGarvin's a good center. And in this draft, like, if they don't go receiver in the first round, you have Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, that from the O-line guys that I trust and follow, he looked phenomenal. And at the Senior Bowl, he looked really good as well.
Man, it's going to be funny when the Bills don't touch receiver till the 4th round. Just because we've all talked about it. I doubt that happens, but we've all talked about it. I know the Bills fan base pretty well because I've been on so many Bills shows because of the Steph Diggs stuff, and then like they trade Steph Diggs, they signed Curtis Samuel, so been on attached to a lot of Bills media the last few years. That media group is so, and their fan base is so wide receiver thirsty, even pre Steph Diggs trade. So it's going to be hilarious when they take a safety and an edge rusher, or an offensive lineman and an edge rusher, or an offensive lineman and safety, and then for like day 3 of the draft broadcast start, and they're like, "Is Javon Baker still available? Or can we add Malik Washington to this like little tiny wide receiver group?" It's going to be pretty outrageous when that happens.